Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Ryan, imagine spending 40 plus hours a week doing a job that even you know is bullshit. It just doesn't matter. That's the reality for millions of people. A 2019 study asked workers if their job was pointless, and over 37% of people in PR, marketing, and IT said, yes, my job is bullshit. But less than 5% of teachers and nurses felt the same way. Why?
Ooh, it's interesting.
What?
So you got sales and PR workers, 40% of sales and PR workers.
No, it didn't say sales. It said sales, marketing, and IT.
Okay, sales, marketing, IT. Okay, so that's a big chunk. But then you got nurses that are 5%. And then I saw this. The more jobs contribute to society, the less they seem to pay and the more purpose it brings. So that just got me thinking, like teachers, government employees,
nonprofits, doing any sort of good.
Yeah, why do the ones that do good things pay the least, and the things that are bullshit like sales, marketing seem like they pay the most or pay more, but they think their job is bullshit?
I mean, there's a lot to discuss there, but it certainly seems to be true that the more a job contributes to society, the less it pays.
But here we go. Here's what's the most surprising about this topic in general.
Okay.
How many of us know something is off, but it keeps going anyway?
Oh, I've been there. I've done that. I've had a job that I knew was BS and I kept going. I wasn't happy about it, but I can see reasons why you would do that.
So then what in this survey, what makes their job bullshit? Like, it's a complete made up job. It has no use. If you remove this job, nothing would change. World keeps going on. Like, what makes why are people saying their job is bullshit?
I mean, I think there could be a couple of reasons, right? Well, one of them is, if your job disappeared tomorrow, would anybody notice, right? Or would anybody even care? I think some of them just feel like they don't serve a purpose, or worse, they don't serve a good purpose, right? Like, I'm here to make rich guys more rich. Like, it's just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm just not going to get out of bed today. I don't want to give my day to that cause.
Because that's interesting, because if sales is one of the ones that thinks their job is bullshit, is it because all they do is bullshit people all day long?
It wasn't sales though. It was PR, marketing, and IT. You keep saying sales, and I don't know. Maybe you just hate sales.
One of the quotes is 40% sales and PR workers.
Sales and PR workers. Okay. All right. That's a different quote than I saw. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. That one says sales and PR workers, and then the other one says PR, marketing, and IT.
Okay. I mean, I could see some sales jobs being BS.
Well, sales job is just to BS people all day, isn't it? That's what they all say, right? Like, I'm just a professional bullshitter.
Spoken by a guy who's not in sales.
I am in sales, and that's all I do is BS all day.
I think it depends a lot on the kind of sales. Like, I think there are people who do sales and have a very, really enjoy their job. And then I'm sure there's a lot of people that just find it to be complete BS. Have you ever had a BS job? I know I have. I've had a couple. I'll share some details, but
I'm trying to think, because, and I know you asked me earlier, you're like, have you had, and you said, if you're having to think about it, you haven't had one. I know I've had BS clients I've had to deal with.
Okay.
But I'm going to have to think about it. So you go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, if you're having to think about it, then the answer is probably no. It's not been as much BS as I have. Yeah. I've worked for a couple of large organizations, Fortune 500s. And one of the things that kind of a rule that I made for myself was, every job has its things that aren't good, right? If your job was nothing but awesome all the time, you would pay them to go. They wouldn't pay you to be there. So there's going to be some level of bullshit in just about any job. My gut says 80-20 is a good rule. That if 80% of your job is adding value and only 20% is BS, you're in a pretty good place, right? Like, that's unrealistic to hope for better than that. I found myself once in a job that I felt was 80% BS and 20% value add. It was just politicking and getting, all of these different people lined up and making sure that nobody's getting their feelings hurt. I mean, it was just all of this kind of political posturing to get something done that was fairly obvious that we should do. But you couldn't call that guy's baby ugly, and well, he funded that thing, so you can't say bad things about it, even though everybody knows the bad things about it. And like, I just got so annoyed that it took so long to actually do something valuable. I started looking for another job, and the paycheck was okay, but it was just way too much BS for the value that I thought I was adding.
So let's quantify this, because I think this is what I missed up front. So this study we're looking at, it's the percentage of people who think their job is pointless or who have doubts about the value for society by occupation. So
Right.
it's does it looks like in on the survey here, it's sales, marketing, and PR staff. More than 40% believe their job is bullshit and adds no value to society.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas nurses were like under 5%.
Oh, yeah.
So I think when you look back at elementary school teachers nurses were less than 5%. It looks like maybe they're 2 or 3%. Elementary school teachers look like they're 4%. So those jobs feel like they add value to society, which makes sense. You're saving people's lives and you're educating children. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sales, marketing, and PR, the highest one, over 40%, think their job adds no value to society.
So why do we build entire industries where the people who work in those industries feel like they're wasting their lives?
Is they're wasting their lives? I guess it really comes
like
into
they are.
Their job is pointless or adds no value to society. I guess it depends on what your motivation is, because if you're a sales guy getting a kick-ass commission, you may think your job doesn't add any value to society, but that doesn't mean you're living a bad life. It doesn't mean you hate your job. It just means you're not adding to society.
Yeah, I think there are some people that are wired for results that would do just about anything within, legal, ethical bounds, as long as it pays well. I think that the percentage of those people as you get into younger demographics goes down. I'm seeing more and more millennials and Gen Zs want to make a positive impact in the world with their work, and throwing more money at them doesn't fix that. It's a different thing, and it's a very important thing that they are willing to, sometimes even forego a higher salary to have a job that they feel like makes a positive impact in the world.
That totally makes sense. One of the ones I like on here, it was right next to the IT workers, which the IT workers look like they're about 37%. Bankers look like they're about 36%. 36%-ish of bankers think their job is pointless and doesn't add value to society. That seems like you could flip that around. I guess it depends on the kind of banker you are too. But if you keep people's money safe and you give them access to their money and access to financial tools that allow them to have a thriving life, that sounds meaningful. I guess if you're on the other side of it, where you're charging bank fees and taking people's money out of their accounts, yeah, you probably don't add value to society. You just make somebody else rich.
I do wonder how much of this is tied back to the fact that organizations now are so large, right? Not all, but many organizations are so large that it's hard for a worker to know the end impact of their job, right? Like if you're a software developer making loan origination software for a bank, right? You're deep in the bowels of some large organization coding away. Your product that you're making gets sold to a bank. The bank then uses it to originate loans to their consumers, right? So you're 3 steps from the end user. Now, that end user, it's very valuable to them. They're buying their first home. They're, doing something hopefully productive with that money. They're starting a small business, right? They're doing something. And the loan officer probably sees that and says, yeah, I'm helping the world. But the guy 3 steps up the value chain, it's got to be really hard for him to see that and say, yeah, I wrote a really good software program that is helping originate small business loans for all of these entrepreneurs. I'm making the world a better place. I think he is, but it's really hard to see when you're in a large organization.
Yeah, maybe this is where I struggle with this topic because I mean that's a lot of what I do when I go into organizations. The first thing we
Mm-hmm.
do is like, how do we make a meaningful impact? I'm the millennial walking these organizations, and like we got to have purpose first. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I struggle with the topic a little bit in the sense of, and I think again, I you look at companies like SpaceX.
Right.
It's very clear what their mission is, and everybody knows what they're working for, and they know how they're making the world a better place.
Right.
You could probably say maybe say the same thing about Tesla, maybe,
Maybe.
maybe. And I think there's dozens of other companies, Southwest Airlines and Chick-fil-A and
There are examples of large organizations that are very aligned to that purpose, and they're very vocal about it, and I
well,
think
let-
they tend to be
let's
very successful organizations.
let's take the stats though. Do you think the IT guy at Chick-fil-A thinks his job is useless? Do you think the PR and marketing people at Chick-fil-A think their job is BS?
Hmm. I don't know. I actually know a couple of marketing people at Chick-fil-A. I should go ask them.
I know, that's why I'm asking. I mean, like, does the PR person at SpaceX think their job is BS?
I doubt it.
So that's where I'm struggling a little bit here because I think, I mean, I've worked with so many companies where we've always found it connected, but I do agree there's a lot of companies, especially older, more legacy companies, especially if they're second, third generation, still small business space. The vision is just grow revenue, expand market share.
Right.
There's some, don't get me wrong, and some legacy companies I've worked with where their undocumented intrinsic motivation was to build community. They don't have a purpose of their product, so to speak, but they donate to this local charity. They support the
Mhm.
local, sports team. They support the community.
Right.
And so their purpose is in their product is not the purpose of the company and what their product does to service their customers. It's more like this is what we do with our profits. And so it's still mission driven. I'd say that's more like nonprofit mission drive as opposed to purpose into what the company does.
Right.
But I still get back into where do all these people find no value in their job?
I mean, if you looked at 100 small businesses, I would easily bet that 40% of them don't have that kind of purpose alignment, right? It's the exception, not the rule. And so the fact that 40% of people think their job is BS does not surprise me. I
Oh,
would have
it,
I would have
it,
guessed it was higher.
it doesn't surprise me. And I know there's companies like that, but to have it on that wide of scale, or not so much the wide of scale, I think what's surprising with it is how much like the PR and marketing thinks their job is BS versus, I guess, the given. And you know what? I was talking to a couple of companies over the past few months, and they're healthcare companies. And I said,
Okay.
you're almost getting a free pass on purpose because you're working with humans and you're serving people. So
Right.
like just in your industry alone, you automatically have a connection to purpose because no one shows up like, I don't want to service people today. I want them to suffer. I want to, shorten their lifespan. Like
Right.
you get a malpractice suit if that's your case, right? Like,
Right.
so I do get it in that sense, but I think it's very interesting that the marketing and sales and PR, IT workers, bankers are, I don't know, I guess I get the bankers. Bankers have their own issues.
Bankers got issues. I think that some of this is a negative byproduct of a society that is really worships the dollar, right? Like we
Yes.
are we are all about the results, at least here stateside, right? Like we don't have a lot of value. We talk about work-life balance, but you look at European countries, they actually do something about it. We work more hours, we make more money, and I think it's because capitalism is functionally the religion of America. And in a world like that, I don't care if you like your job or not. it's just a question of how much money you're making. And so I think there's a lot of people who buy that, right? Maybe they've never even thought about it. They've just kind of assumed that that's the way the world works. And so they have a job, they hate their job, but it pays the bills. And so they don't think about it. And they're not bringing their best self to work, but they never thought they were supposed to. They're just there to get a paycheck and not get fired.
Could meaningless jobs be freeing, like emotional detachments with benefits? Or like friends with benefits, right?
Okay.
And can you feel useless and still be happy at work?
Hmm.
I, I think I'm going to go with can you feel useless and still be happy at work? I don't think anybody would. I think people that are happy at work and their job is, let's say, more mundane or perceived as just anybody can do, easy to do, doesn't add real value.
Right.
That to me, if you've got a person happy in that role, that might be the right person for it.
Right.
Because that means they find their value outside of work and they show up, they clock in, they do their job, they go home happy. Like, that doesn't sound like a downside to me.
Yeah, I think that that's okay for a while. But let's go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There's always this desire to move up, right? And I don't mean move up in the company. I mean move up the ladder of needs, right? So once your shelter, food, and clothing are met, you tend to start now looking for things like love, and fulfillment, and you move your way up. So if you're in a context where you're not sure if you and your loved ones are going to have enough to eat or a place to stay, then we're not even having this conversation, right? Because you don't care how bullshit your job is. This is what is feeding your family. Suck it up, buttercup. Get to work, right? But once you've moved past that, where you've got a little bit of money in the bank, things are relatively stable financially, you know that people are going to be clothed and fed and everything else like that, you start asking the next question. And that next question is more around purpose, meaning, impact.
I get all that. I seriously, I get all that, but that doesn't mean that has to be your job. Like, your job is not your only place to find that. And so I think in the devil's advocate question here is, can you feel useless at work and still be happy? I think if your Maslow's hierarchy of needs is being met externally, like if the food and clothing and housing and all that is being provided by the job, then check, your job is the bottom rung of that.
Right.
And so I think this really gets into, like, I can see how a sales or a marketing individual may see there's no societal value to their role, but that doesn't mean that they hate their job, they're not happy at work, or they're not getting purpose. So
Yeah,
I think
they're finding purpose someplace else.
Right. So then I think that goes back into the question is, like, where are we going with this?
I think it is a common problem. Like, I think it is something that makes work suck for a lot of people. And I think there's a couple of ways that you can solve this, but I think it is a broad problem, which is the fact that a third of their life, right? We've said this before, you spend about a third of your life asleep, a third of your life working, and a third of your life doing other things. About a third of your life is spent doing something that you don't really care about. Now you've got to do it to pay the bills, to feed your family, to have a place, because I'm a big fan of not sleeping outside. But at some point you start to ask that question of, what have I done with my life? What have I done with my talents? Is this really all there is? And I don't think that purpose is just a luxury of the privileged. I get that most people need a paycheck, but I think that eventually all of us begin to ask these questions, unless you're permanently stuck in that survival mode. This question of purpose, am I making a difference? If I was to disappear tomorrow, would anybody notice? Would anybody care? Like, that question comes up eventually.
I agree, but I'm still bringing that back to people find meaning outside of work more so than they find meaning inside of work. And I think maybe this is a generational thing. Maybe because the older generations, it was more outside of work. And maybe with millennials and Gen Zs, we're looking for more meaning, or that's the way society is evolving. But I go back down to people think that their job is bullshit and contributing to society. So, but does that necessarily mean if you think your job is not like a sales rep, me selling this coffee mug does not make the world a better place? Does that make work suck?
How do you feel about it as an employer? Like if you were hiring people and your whole team was like, yeah, this job's bullshit, but the pay's good.
But we got to keep in mind, we're not talking about the job is bullshit. We're talking about the value it provides to society.
Okay.
So that's where I'm challenging the survey and how we're looking at it, because I do think if a person is disgruntled and thinks their job is bullshit, that is more environment of the company, core values, cultures like that. But what this was a survey of people across many companies in their field, and the value they thought their job provided to society. Bankers, IT workers, PR, sales, all thought their job was bullshit in terms of how it adds value to society. So how does thinking your job doesn't add value to society make work suck?
I mean, I know it was hard for me when I was in a job like that, working in a large organization, never seeing my end beneficiary, knowing that if I worked really, really hard, maybe I contribute a little bit to the earnings this quarter, which makes some hedge fund manager, a little bit richer. Like, it was just hard for me to get really motivated to contribute my highest and best, right? I did the job. I did it reasonably well, but I took that extra energy and began looking for other things that I found more fulfilling, because there just didn't seem to be the marginal time there was just not worth investing in that organization.
I agree. What I'm challenging you on is I don't think that's what this survey is talking about. I think there's a difference between a company's purpose and you being fulfilled in your role, and a particular role is bullshit compared to another.
All right. So then what would you advocate? What's your position?
I do agree. And let me say with this, I do agree with if there's no purpose in the organization and you attract talent that's looking for purpose, or you have a false sense of purpose, I do agree that's going to end poorly. And people will say the job's bullshit and they'll walk away. I think what I want to, like, why, let's just take us two forms maybe. Company's got a great purpose. Well, let me take another example. I don't know, I'm kind of rabbit trailing here. Healthcare company.
Okay.
Healthcare company has sales reps, marketing, PR, IT, finance, nurses, operations. So according to that survey, in that same company that has a great purpose, and the nurses at the organization think their job adds value, do the sales rep think their job is bullshit?
I guess it depends on what they're selling.
What if they're selling hospice services?
That wouldn't be too hard for me to see the value there. What if you're selling hospice management systems? Like, that one's like, oh, needs to exist, right? Like, I'm not saying it's not a thing.
Yeah, I don't think people had any problem with their jobs. I think they loved their jobs. They made a lot of money.
And they probably did.
And they knew they were providing software to hospice services so they can better provide care. I think this goes back to, again, I think where we break this down is if a company has a good purpose, and I'm using the hospice company because it's got two opposite ends of the spectrum on this grid here.
Yep.
The nurses make sense. The question is, do the sales reps in that organization, marketing and sales reps, feel like their job is BS in comparison to their peers that are the nurses? Do they feel like they're not needed in the organization? They're needed for generate revenue for the company, but do the sales reps at a hospice and home health organization, do their sales reps feel like they add no value to society?
I can see that. Because as a sales rep, if you don't buy from me, you're going to buy from somebody else. Right. And so if I'm not here, there's 3 other people you can buy from. And so I can see why that could feel like, yeah, I'm not really contributing a lot to society here. Because if I was gone, nobody would notice. And the other challenge with sales is that sales is usually interacting primarily with the buyer and not as much with the user. And so in many organizations, the buyer and the user are 2 different things, right? So if you think about a nurse, well, actually think about a teacher, right? The user is the student. The teacher gets a ton of time with the student. The payer is mom or dad. And the teacher probably doesn't have as much interaction with mom or dad, right? But the sales guy is probably only interacting with mom and dad, has very little exposure to the child, which is where a lot of the impact is. And so I think part of the challenge here of why people feel like their job is BS is the distance from their job, from their seat to the person who is receiving the positive impact of that organization's creation.
Ooh, there you go. You just landed it.
All right.
The distance between,
end of episode.
The distance between you and the person that gets the most benefit from your job.
And the beneficiary of the product or service.
The beneficiary of the product and services. So I can see it using that light from a sales rep. You're so disconnected from it, how you can feel that. So then.
And PR is worse, right? Like PR was like, we got hacked. You know, we lost a million social security numbers. And my job is to write a memo to a bunch of investors trying to convince them to not dump the stock. Like, who's the beneficiary there? Me, shareholders, the CEO? Like, hard to know who's the beneficiary, hard to see if I'm actually making a difference. I can see why that would be a really discouraging job.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, you probably take a few drinks after that day of work and just like.
I'm not saying that all PR people are liars. I'm just saying that I can see why they would have a hard time feeling like their job is making a positive impact on society.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn this the other way.
All right.
I can totally get behind if you were selling smoke and mirrors, and your job is to get people to sign on the dotted line for vaporware.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see how. And of course, if you take that and you're selling a software system, then yeah, you don't have nurses and teachers and librarians working in your organization. You've got IT and sales and marketing.
Right.
So that I can see. And that would, I guess you take the stat and you go, okay, 40% of those workers feel like that. So would that mean, I'm making some assumptions here, would that mean roughly 40% of sales, marketing, IT people, let's say SaaS companies, kind of all fit into that category, right? Are selling a crappy product?
No, I wouldn't go there. Because I think you can sell a good product and not understand the positive impact that you're having.
That's where I struggle, because I think, especially in today's age, if you know what product you're selling, you probably know the benefits downstream. Like, I don't think you have to have a perfect VTO on the wall to know that.
I would challenge you. I think there's a lot of people that don't connect those dots.
Again, I know they're out there, and maybe that's why they're 40%. That's the 40% that doesn't connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
So is it 40% aren't capable of connecting the dots? Are you calling 40% of people stupid, Daniel?
No, I would call a lot higher percentage than 40. I just think that there's people who don't give it the mental effort. Like, they're just like, look, my job is to come in here and make sure all of these numbers look like those numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what? Like, why do you do that? I don't ask. That's just my job. Well, it's like, so who, right? Like, so who benefits from that? Not my problem. Not my job.
Well, that's not given.
There's a lot, right? But there's a lot of people that are like that, and you could be curing cancer, but They're just like, you know what? They didn't ask me to do that. They just asked me to make sure these numbers look like those numbers.
But see, that's where I'm going back into the particular fields. So I get that it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a banker, a librarian, all the ones that are on the survey here.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be individuals that fit into the category, regardless of their field.
Right.
But I go into why are sales, marketing, and PR the highest group that think their job is bullshit in contributing to society. And the only thing I can take into that or take out of that is the product or service they're representing or the systems they're working on don't add value or don't move the needle.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's think about this for a second through vision, journey, culture, results. We've talked about organizations that don't have a clear purpose or don't have a compelling purpose, right? Like maximize shareholder returns is not something that very many people get out of bed for. I think that there's a lot of people, this 40% here that don't understand how their job contributes to the purpose of the organization, right? So you got a couple of different problems here. One of them is the organization has no real purpose other than to make money. It's results only. And that's an executive leadership problem, a board problem, C-suite problem. They've got to fix that. They've got to find some purpose. But let's assume, okay, option 2 is that hard work has been done. There is a purpose. There's now a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that's communicated to the organization and tied back to every individual job. Here is how your work as a bookkeeper contributes to the purpose that this organization exists to achieve. And that's a management task, right? Management's got to do that hard work of connecting the dots. Now, then there's that third group that even if there was a great purpose and even if their manager communicated it, they wouldn't give a damn. And we're not going to be able to probably change that. So I think that's probably the 3 tiers. The question is, where does this 40% of PR, marketing, and IT people sit? Are they in the organizations that don't have a good purpose? Are they in the organizations that have a purpose, but they don't understand how they're connected to it? Or are they just the people who just don't care, even if there's a great purpose and it's very clear how they connect, they still don't want to be involved?
So I'm going to take this stance on it.
All right.
I think the reason why the survey's 40% in those groups is because those are the people where they are met with, hey, let's just say part of our mission is we work with mission-driven or purpose-driven organizations.
Okay.
And you walk into an organization, you're going to sell them a product and they don't really fit. And they're not really a culture fit. They're not really the right ICP, but then the boss says, sell them anyway. And so it's forced to sell to a company they don't believe is a good fit and doesn't serve the mission. And I think that's why the PR and sales and marketing are up there, because they're forced to close deals, put press releases out, glaze over details that don't align with the job or the mission of the company.
Yeah, so maybe that's something in between. It's not that they don't have a purpose, and it's not that they've got a purpose that's not communicated. It's that they've got a purpose, maybe it's been communicated, but they're being asked to behave in a way that is contrary to the purpose. Ooh, and that's a good one.
So my job as a sales rep's bullshit because, we do this, we sell this product to these people that shouldn't have it. We shouldn't be saying no to, but we're not living the purpose.
Right. We're here to help these people, but at the end of the quarter, we got to close this deal. And so I'm going to tell them it does things that it doesn't do to get this deal signed. And then we'll just figure it out later. And in the long run, you're just going to end up screwing your customer, but we need the deal.
Yep.
Yeah. I have seen that, and that sucks.
And I think this is why you're seeing like bankers, IT. Bankers is a weird one, but IT, sales, marketing, HR HR was even up the. Actually, what was interesting? Journalism was 20%. I think journalism is almost like a BS job at this point, just because the way the media is going. But that's a whole nother topic for another day.
Well, that's a different episode.
But I think the reason why those are so high up there is companies will put the mission up there, but they don't live it.
Yeah.
And so therefore the people aren't connecting to it. So then they think their job is bullshit because it's not living to a mission.
Right. They say one thing and do another, or incentivize and reward another.
Right.
Yeah. We say we're here for purpose, but we still bonus the people who bring in the most deals, even if the deals are bullshit.
Right. That is why I think they feel like they add no value, or one of the many reasons, I should say.
Yeah. I think that's good. All right. What do we do about it?
Ooh.
Because let's be honest, it is unrealistic to believe that every job is a calling, right? Like somebody's got to mop the floors, somebody's got to empty the trash cans, somebody has to do the jobs that nobody really wants to do. So we can't believe that everyone's going to have their perfect job. But I don't know if having 40% of people think that their job is bullshit means this is working. So how do we change this?
Again, I'm still a little like, what am I supposed to do with the information in this survey? Like, what are we trying to prove or do here? So I'm just going to say this as more anecdotal, not fully grasping what this thing is trying to communicate. So I would say this: if you are a manager, leader, something like that, someone with direct reports or running an organization, I would go to your people and ask if they think their job is bullshit. And if they think their job is bullshit, adding no value, ask why. And then either A, you're going to find you have people that don't care about your vision or don't align with the purpose, or you're going to find that your vision and purpose aren't clear, or you're going to find that the culture of the company does not operate in a way to achieve the purpose. And I think you're going to have either one of those three insights. You're going to have a plan of what to do. Because let's be honest, if people think their job is bullshit or their role is bullshit and adds no value, then you're probably not getting top performers. And, every business owner executive wants A players, which I have a problem with that term, but that's another episode.
Whatever that means.
Yep. Top performers, A players, But at the end of the day, you do want all the people in the organization to be equally bought in and working at, a fair rate of each other. Not every day, people are going to have ebbs and flows, stuff like that. It's not about having perfect performance. Like you said, it doesn't exist. But I think if you can just ask those questions, if you're a leader or manager, you might be surprised and you'll have some clarity on a path you can walk forward. If you are an individual and you think your job is bullshit right now, I would challenge you. Why do you think your job is bullshit? Is it because the company doesn't live its purpose? Then maybe it's time to define what your purpose is. This is like, go to the previous episode. We just talked about this.
You're right.
Find what your purpose is and see if you can find a company that aligns with it.
Right. Find your why.
Find your why. If you think it's really because you just don't know, like, start asking. You might be surprised on how your work contributes to somebody's, that contributes, as I say, contributes to society, but contributes to the benefit of somebody.
Right. That's an interesting, and this is a potential tangent, but I'll go quickly. In very large organizations, your customers might be internal. Like the people that you create value for and that you positively impact could work for the same company. And you're still making society a better place, right? Like if you're part of the sales comp team, your customers are the sales team. And doing your job well has a positive impact on them. And so I don't think that everybody's going to cure cancer or, feed the homeless, right? Like, I just think that's unrealistic. But I do think that there's, as an individual, it's worth a little effort to step back and think, okay, who benefits from the work that I do? If I wasn't here, if nobody did this job, what would the world look like? And who would suffer if nobody did this job? Because those are the people that are benefiting from your work. And there's probably more value to most roles than people think because they haven't spent the time to go through that work.
I'm going to give you an example of what you just said, going back to the healthcare home
Okay.
health company. If that home health company has nurses that are badass and take care of the patient, you've got a CEO that really cares, goes out of the way to take care of the customers. You provide more than just the care that the government pays for,
Right.
and you're a sales rep, then not closing that deal means you possibly removed the opportunity for that person to have the best care possible.
Right.
If your company can provide, there may be a company that's equally serviceable, but
Maybe.
there's probably other companies that are equally not. That doesn't make sense. Below that bar.
Yep.
But you're depriving that person the opportunity. You may be a sales rep. Yes, you may be making the money for that organization. But if your company really is providing that level of service, then you're depriving the individual the opportunity to that level of care.
I agree. I do think that with AI coming, a lot of these BS jobs are going to be eliminated.
Oh, I agree. But I think
those are some of the first to go.
But it goes back to, like, again, according to the survey that we're referencing this off of, like, what are we calling BS? Because I think there's bullshit jobs that are meaningless, and there's people that think their role is bullshit to the value it adds to society. So I agree with you in the terms of mindless bullshit jobs, sweeping the warehouse when it's completely robotic.
Sure.
Probably a useless job. But
I don't know. I saw this stat recently, or it was a graph, and it was like it graphed income versus lawn care. And it's like, when you're broke, you mow your own lawn. When you make some money, you pay somebody else to mow your lawn. And then when you're really wealthy, you go back to mowing your own lawn again because you enjoy it, because it actually feels like you're accomplishing something. Like, there's a lot to be said about manual labor because you actually feel like you can see that you did something.
Next episode.
That'll be the next episode. I do think that ideally a job can have both purpose and stability, right? Financial stability. I don't think those are opposites. It's hard to find. You've got to do a lot of work to get there. And so it's not necessary that those two things are connected, right? If you're fortunate enough that they are, congratulations. But there's a lot of people who are going to do one job and then find purpose and meaning and impact in something else. And that's okay. That's okay. I think it's just being clear on what are your expectations of yourself and of your work.
I agree. All right. So as we wrap up here, here's what I would love to know. Do you think your job, this is a question for the listeners, do you think your job matters to the world? Why or why not? Would love to know in the comments. What would you do if you couldn't pretend your job was meaningful anymore?
Right. Remember, so everybody knows your job is BS. What do you do about that?
Remember, 37% in marketing who said their job was BS. What if they're right? And what if we're all just pretending?
Ooh, I'd love to hear some comments to that. Thanks for listening.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.